Okay, everybody, I think we'll get started. I know some more people will be joining, but to be respectful of everybody's time, including our speakers, I think we'll get going. I'm Dean Evans. Welcome, everybody, to the May Peer-to-Peer Network monthly meeting. Get together. Our speaker today is Karin Patriquin, who's going to be talking about seize the opportunity of historic passive house retrofits. She'll describe her firm's challenging passive house renovation of their brick commercial building constructed in 1816, close to my birthday, but not exact, and a significant feature of its diverse urban neighborhood. The result is a resilient passive house certified net zero energy ready Fitwel compliant historic building. I think for the P2P group, that's been an aspiration ever since I've been involved with it, is to get all that into a 1816 building. And how you it. I'll read the learning objectives just so we're kosher with the AIA. One, you'd be able to gain insight into seeking local opportunities for energy efficient retrofits of historic buildings, create strategies and language to advocate for historic energy retrofits based on interior occupant health and environmental quality, EE, low carbon and body carbon, climate resilience, historic preservation. And that's a good one for our group because we're always looking for those arguments and how you make the case and moving these things forward. Employ technical strategies for EE retrofits, including strategies for insulating and air sealing. Yep. Upgrading to high performance windows, upgrading mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and triaging during construction, another important part, I think, for all of us in the field. And then leverage historic energy retrofits to engage and inspire the wider community and make their own contributions to local resiliency and solutions. So it's my pleasure now to turn it over a bit of housekeeping. You all know where the men's and women's room are because you're all remote, so I won't tell you about that. But please keep muted for the presentation. Karin would like to go through the whole presentation and then take questions at the end. So please, if you've got your questions, jot them down. And then we'll open the floor like we usually do. Ideally, people raising their hands, and I will recognize you, and then you unmute. But with that, I'll turn it over to Karin and let us get started. Karin Patriquin.
Thank you very much, Dean. Thank you very much to the P2P group generally, Green Bank as well. Yes, very excited to be here today to present our 1816 masonry historic retrofit passive house. And I will share my screen. I just realized I hadn't done that as yet. Please let me know if you can see this.
Yes,
yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm just going to move my little screen over. I never remember how to do that. I'm sorry. Just one quick second. Okay, good. So roughly in 3 sections, we're talking about the opportunity, which is really talking about an intro to our project and the opportunities and challenges with our building. Second part, and so the biggest part, the passive house renovation construction itself. And then third part, stewardship, the ongoing care of this building through the lens of Fitwel certification. Okay, and it's not moving forward. There we go. A little bit about myself, founder and president of Patriquin Architects, founded in 2010. We work with, I'll let you read here for just a quick second. And I'm a passive house certified professional, as well as a Fitwel ambassador. I'd like to thank other members of our team for this particular project. So we were the architects, structural engineering, Centec, mechanical contractor, Quality Mechanical, FIAS submitter, so Jeanette Penniman in our office as the submitter, FIAS verifier, McGrath Associates, Nicole Berger there, and general contractor, Green Homes. So the opportunity, this is an 1816 brick masonry building, originally built as a hotel in a burgeoning and successful oystering and fishing community, which was the beginnings of Fairhaven on the east side of New Haven. We undertook the passive house retrofit starting during COVID times and ending with the final hookup of the photovoltaics in 2023. Here is our location. You can see in red, it is our office as well. We are on the corner of Grand Avenue and Front Street. And you can see we are right close to the river, and the buildings to the north were fishery people in the fishing and oystering business. A lot of them have these basements which were sort of open to people coming and buying their wares. Across the river here was Fairhaven Heights, where there are another residential community here that were, again, people in the fishing and oystering business. You can see that over time, this is a river run, a large complex to our west took over, but this typically was all residential along here. And then Grand Avenue is a thoroughfare between us, Fairhaven, and into New Haven itself. And this area is more commercial. So here you see in 3D our little building. It's the oldest freestanding commercial building in New Haven. Again, built as a hotel in 1816. So on the first floor was lobby and dining room. Second floor were the rooms, and then the third floor was a ballroom. And you can see here on the right, we are at the very tip of a historic district known as the Quinnipiac River Historic District in New Haven. For our own research, but also to present to the Historic District Commission, we looked at Sanborn maps, which we always find very helpful. For those who don't know, these maps are drawn up for fire insurance purposes, for risk, and pink is masonry, yellow is wood. So you can see here that our building in 1886, for instance, was a freestanding building, but had all these, had sort of an area of wooden buildings to the west and to the south, and that is where this, and at that time the building was owned by Mr. King. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I can hear something. This the area was called
Excuse me, Karin, I'll tell everybody, please everybody mute your phones. Thanks. We had a little chop on there a few minutes ago, so everybody can just mute their phones. Thanks.
Excellent. So you can see these buildings were all commercial buildings, little shops on to the west and to the south, which really meant that for us, and sort of the point of our presentation at the Historic District is that these two sides were always meant to be seen. These were not. The other two sides were not, and they were really chopped up. And so that's where we're doing any of our exterior changes, which are really just the locations of our exhaust and intake for our new ERVs. So our story, here we are at the intersection of Grand Avenue this way and Front Street. This River Run complex is a large affordable housing complex, which also has a dentist's office and medical office on the first floor. But you can see really our little building is dwarfed by that one. And you can see there are some other original historic buildings in the area. So again, here is our building. There is a park here now with a hotel and a bridge across here. It takes you into Fairhaven Heights. So really for us, there's an opportunity at the storefront and to occupy after COVID, especially the sidewalk. And then to really think about the views to the river here, not only by us, the occupants of the building, but perhaps on the first floor. And there's also an opportunity to do some design work in the backyard. And then we have a southeastern, which is not completely ideal, but completely unimpeded roof for photovoltaics, which we also then added during our construction. So we are in a flood zone typically in this area, but this area here was lifted, the grades were lifted right around the access to this bridge in a 1990s. Renovation, or not a renovation, bridge work, resulting in the fact that our building itself is not in a floodplain, but our basement, which is very porous, does get moisture. So our first floor elevation is above the 100 year, but again, our basement is in the 500. So one of the first things that we looked at is to separate the basement from our thermal envelope. The blue line is roughly the floodplain, and then removing anything of value from the basement. So some of our issues then in general, we have poor acoustic isolation from traffic, low air quality, air coming from a humid basement, poor thermal insulation, lower ceilings. They all had sheetrock ceilings, and fossil fuel dependent equipment in the basement below a 500-year floodplain. So some of our strategies then at the basement level was to remove the basement from the thermal envelope. On the upper floors, decided then to do an interior renovation, it being a historic masonry exterior. We do have the opportunity for 3 separate tenancies. So each floor has its own access. And so the strategy then is to look at 1 mechanical unit per floor. Now here I also want to say that during our construction, when we were originally thinking of having our offices on the 1st and 2nd floor, and then perhaps renting out the 3rd floor, we had the opportunity of someone in the neighborhood who was looking for a space to open a restaurant on the 1st floor. And knowing that this was originally, hotel lobby, very public, and that having a public use here would be a much better use for a building like this for the neighborhood, we actually pivoted and decided, okay, let's run with this. So we will be having a cafe on the 1st floor. And then for us, our offices on the 2nd and 3rd floor. And thermally what that did is that we kept the thermal envelope here, but we did add a thermal barrier along this floor too, so that our air is our air, their air is their air. So the passive house design and construction itself was the next. A quick primer for those who want to be reminded, limits to heating and cooling demands for passive house means you have to have a very tight envelope. Energy use is paramount, so we need efficient systems, and air tightness means continuous air barrier. This is what our numbers look like to begin with. You can see we're doing very well, except for our source energy, which we'll discuss in a moment. So the strategy here, this is our WFI model, is to make it, yes, an interior renovation. We're removing the stairs and we're removing the basement. The basement we also already talked about. The stairs, because they were very narrow already, and so adding the any extra width to the exterior walls did not make sense, and also it's just extra volume that we need to heat and cool, so we decided to take those out. So here then is our typical plan. This is our 1st floor plan, where you can see our barrier here that removes the stairs from the envelope. And then our strategy on the mechanical is that at each floor there's 1 all-in-one ERV unit with a very simple line of ducting. We've actually been able to make this 1 straight line with then an extra over to the bathroom area. An extra line, sorry. Yeah, and each of these floors is roughly 1,400 square feet, so it actually works well for just 1 unit per floor. Envelope strategy then, insulation values at the roof 55, 56, walls 38.8, floor, which is the floor of our 1st floor, or the underside of the, so the ceiling of our basement is at 40. And very importantly, and you can see it behind me here, we have new interior triple pane windows that we have installed inside of our exterior historic windows, which we are actually keeping in place. So these are inward opening tilt turn windows. Again, a U value 0.16. Mechanically then, we are replacing the 3, or we completely removed the 3 gas furnaces in the basement. We now have no need for the air in the basement to come up. And we have all electric new systems on each of the upper floors. We have a Minotaur system in each 1 closet per floor. And we have these intakes and exhausts on the exterior. And instead of having 2, 2, and 2, what we did is we have on the 1st floor intake and return. And here we have intake for both 2nd and 3rd, and return for 2nd and 3rd as well. And this was key to try to have as few openings as possible on this elevation, which is also in view of the street at Front Street. So again, this is that one elevation that's wonky because it always had these other buildings that were attached to it. So if in reality, you actually see these areas which it used to have fire escapes. It used to have a number of different openings here. So understanding occupancy. This is a building which is potentially it is multi-use, potentially multi-use, and so we had to make some assumptions here. So for when we first looked at this, we decided, all 3 floors are office administrative, and that's how we certified the building. But there are 3 possible separate tenancies. So it is a whole building passive house retrofit, but when we did the blower door, we then had to create openings between the first and second and third, so that all the air was moving throughout. So you could look at this as a whole building. And then occupants, we know that we knew that they're going to be fluctuating occupants, so we had to sort of look at it with any number of occupants to see what would be the driving number. So we landed on an 18 number of occupants, which is roughly 6 per floor. But we did look at it with less to make sure that number still worked, depending how many we would have per floor, I'm sorry, overall occupancy. And as Passive House calculates that by looking at 18 occupants, 9 hours a day, 250 days a year, so an office occupancy, which is interesting. So understanding energy loads. Anytime we were looking at this, we would always, we would underestimate, we would overestimate, and then try to figure out exactly where this was going to be. So looking at the coldest time of the year, warmest time of the year. But we also found that other than the fans for the mechanical units, which was second, are actually our largest load are what's called large appliances, and in our case that means our computers and our servers. So we had to calculate how many we thought we would need and looked at their loads, and really that is our largest driver, which is something you don't have to think about when you're looking at residential. Our HVAC systems, here are these Minotaur systems, 1 per floor, first, second, third floor there. This is an all-in-one heating, cooling, ventilation, and dehumidification system. And it alternates ventilation mode and conditioning mode. So there was a little bit of tricky discussion with FIAS to figure out how to model that. And again, that's a major factor in our energy use. It's number 2 after our servers and computers. Energy generation, our design did meet our heating and cooling targets, but you remember we'd exceeded the source energy. So a rooftop PV array was needed for certification. We were thinking eventually we might like to put it in, but we ended up having to put it in for our certification. So it became a priority, and we went ahead with the installation of that system. And so then you can see there that now we pass. Construction, very interesting process. Again, this is an interior renovation. So this is the 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor. During demolition, removing all the most of the stud framing. This is a post and beam. You can see the stud framing was not structural, so we added we recreated a framing on the interior, and in that framing is where the new windows sit. During this period, though, we found that our chimney was leaning and decoupling from the exterior wall, so we had to repair that and repair other areas that were funky. I mentioned that on the south face, for instance, there were all these areas where this was probably a door to a fire escape. So a number of those areas had to be remedied before we went on. Next, then bulk water and bulk water control and secondary air barrier. This is a Stow Gold that gets applied to the interior of the masonry. And here you can see where we removed some of the flooring so that we could then get continuous insulation and air barrier along the exterior, the interior of the exterior wall. Here we are adding this new boxed out chimney, which is not a real chimney. It's there for historic preservation purposes. And then our primary air vapor barrier, doors and windows, you can see here, that's the existing historic window, creating a pan and flashing everywhere, and then adding our second windows, our triple pane tilt turn windows. And then that also meant that we had to have FIAS rated doors at our access to our stairs, because that's where our thermal envelope is. So that was a challenge as well. It's always hard to find those doors. Blower door testing was very much a team effort for our office and our contracting team. And first time was very tricky. There's a lot of air that comes along. Some of these systems you can see here are some of these beams. The air would just come from the exterior all the way along here and then dump out. So there's a lot of funky stuff that you would never see in new construction. Any of the penetrations through the air barrier, we had to make sure, again, we're very, very carefully taped. And then after this, we have this SIGA product and dense pack cellulose that came in. And then finally the sheetrock lighting, exposed mechanical ducting. So you can see that one line of ducting on the third floor, one line of ducting on the second floor, and then on the first floor there as well. So that's the mechanicals. So very easy system. And then what's right, you can't see it behind us. There's a line that takes that goes to the bathroom. And here is a finished product ready for us to move in on the third and second floor. And how we are today, actually not today, probably a couple of weeks ago. We've added a couple of things since then, but this is how we are now. The third floor, again, is our conference room, which used to be the ballroom. Second floor, which used to be the hotel rooms, is our open studio with privacy booths over here. And the first floor, ready for our new tenant. We then added our photovoltaics, and this is a picture before, as you can see. I showed you the after picture later. And did want to share with you some of our early monitoring. So our proposed energy usage is roughly 50 kilowatt hours per day, which is an EUI of 4.51. Nice and low. Our actual energy usage modeled at 50 kilowatt per day is actually 57 kilowatt hours per day at this moment. And that's after about 8 months of monitoring. So these are UI graphs, UI bills. And then our energy usage. So our energy, that was hooked up and finally activated in January. So we have about 4 months of energy that we can look at. And we're at 41.4. We were hoping to, according to our projections, to be at about 76%, that we would be producing 76% of the energy that we require. And we're actually at 83% so far. So we are ahead of the game. Very happy about that. And we're really looking forward to seeing what happens in the summer months where we have a higher air conditioning load, but we'll also have higher energy production. So that'll be very interesting to see, to finish out the year with some monitoring there. And then finally, my last chapter is stewardship of our building. Now that we have our passive house renovation, now we have moved in, we're looking at this through the Fitwell certification. Which is, if you don't know, is a certification which talks about healthy occupants within healthy buildings, and also healthy sort of community engagement, community relationships. So we're looking at the Fitwell itself, which is made up of health impact categories, and it's similar to a LEED or other certifications, which has a scorecard. So these are the impact categories. These are what you are trying to achieve. And then there is a scorecard. I'm only showing the very beginning of that scorecard, but there are 12 categories within that. The ones that I want to touch on today: site access, indoor health, and ongoing operations. This is a multi-tenant whole building certification. So we're actually looking at certifying the entire building and knowing that there may be different tenants over time. So indoor indoor environment and workspaces. We have to have an indoor air quality policy and indoor air quality testing, which is something that we don't typically do as architects. We don't sort of see that, so that'll be really interesting to start that process. Workspaces, they value natural daylight, views of nature, which we have. And because of our layout, we make sure that all our spaces do have access to that. And they recommend active workstations. So we will have one active workstation and thermal control devices, which we have on each floor. Shared spaces, interestingly, this really starts to get into some of the operations. So well beyond just the design of the building, regular cleaning for bathrooms, having a break area that has cleaning protocols. Interestingly too, quiet room / lactation room. There's a lot of studies that say if these are made available, then you are able to then have as employees or tenants, women who would like, yes, so we could have a lactation room so that we can have lactation during business hours. Multi-purpose room also, so third floor is right now is very open, but we will have the idea of that is to have conferences and the possibility of other uses as well. Perhaps an exercise room. There is importance in the Fitwell for exercising, so it'll be interesting to see how exactly we will be addressing this. And access to a crop share or other fresh produce. So it's interesting. There's a whole bunch of different strategies that you can take on, and these are the ones that we have decided to participate in. Water supply is also very important to actually have water quality testing. And there's also importance placed on things like the food area. So to have a healthy food and beverage policy for, when we do have product reps or others who are bringing in lunch, so any catering, and then also to have, for bigger companies, vending machines and snack bars. For us, it's a sort of volunteer snack bar, but to have healthy foods according to their policies. And then again, more operations, actually having a green purchasing policy to write out what our collaboration process will be, emergency preparedness, defibrillator, certified first responders, emergency address. So it's interesting, very, very different lens from what we're used to doing. But this was the one that we really took to heart, is that we have this building that is very much an open building or open to the street that was built to welcome the public, and we're actually bringing that back. So the way that Fitwell looks at this is to create an accessible pedestrian route between the main building here, and we actually have a bus stop up this way and the one over here. So yes, creating this accessible entrance there. Bicycle parking, yes, and we have, and the city of New Haven has put a bicycle parking here in the front. We also have access in the back for our employees to have bicycles. We do have 2 employees that come by bike. And then parking efficiency practices. Won't get into that one. And then publicly accessible use on the ground floor. And that's really this is a big thing for us to create this new use that's going to be publicly accessible to for our building. And then in the back of our building, there are opportunities to have a restorative garden. It'll be interesting to look at that. Perhaps some outdoor fitness. Perhaps some fruit and vegetable, or certainly herbs anyway. So we'll see that. And then we've taken on as a sort of bonus to this, a rainwater collection, or it'll actually just come straight off the leader here. We have a gutter on this side. Leader will bring it down right down to this rainwater collection. We do have composting within our building right now, and there will be a service that'll come and pick it up. Right now, we actually take turns bringing it home, but we do have composting, and we've really taken on the effort for reduced waste within the office in general. There's this thing within Fitwell called the that they look at as a walk score. Walk score is actually used a lot by real estate people, real estate companies, and we can see here ours is at an 83, which is a nice high number. It is an urban area, but it really takes into account all the amenities that are in the area. So whether it's groceries, cafes, restaurants, those kind of things, schools, and all the other things. And finally, to sort of bringing it all together, this is what our site strategies are. You know, why we have a nice high score of 3 stars for our Fitwell. That we have our cafe that we're bringing in to our office. There will be outdoor seating on the sidewalk, outdoor seating over here as well. Bicycle parking. We have a bus transit stop, which is run nice and close. We have a park located across the street with a walking trail. And we will be eventually creating, right now it's just a lawn, but we'd like to create something a little more exciting here with some sort of garden. And we have this, what they're calling a compact commuter parking lot, which means that we actually have fewer parking spaces than are actually required by zoning, which for them is a good thing. And just means that we take turns sort of parking on the street. And roughly the same thing, again, just another view. You can see here where we do have an opportunity to create a really interesting backyard space as well. And that is my presentation. Thank you very, very much.
Terrific. Thanks, Karin. Great presentation, and really unpacked that project really nicely. So it's now time for questions for Karin. I'd suggest that everybody who's interested raise their hand, and I'll recognize you. Although I know that with this group, sometimes you just can't wait and you unmute and ask a question anyway, and that's okay too. So let's start it off. Questions for initial questions for Karin. I want to see if there's anybody raising their hands. Not yet. Okay. I had a couple, Karin,
Sure.
to ask you about. So essentially the project was to on the top 3 floors, not the basement, to build a building inside the building, basically. I mean, is that overstating it, or does that sound about right?
It's an interior passive house retrofit. So yes, we had to rebuild most of the interior, interior of the exterior walls, framing, so that we could get the right insulation values.
Gotcha. And then the same thing, I was wondering about the windows, because I think you said they were fairly high performance, the interior windows that you put in.
Yes, they're triple pane. Yep, tilt turns.
Was that making the assumption that the exterior windows were almost just like being outside the existing?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happened. They're actually sort of almost basically almost like screens. In fact, we do keep them open, the exterior ones, so that there is air movement, so we don't get condensation. We actually keep them slightly open, and so the tightness is really at the new window. As you can see again.
Yeah, I was wondering why that window looked below you, but now you're on. Are you in the conference room right now?
I'm on the 3rd floor. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you have to lie down to look out them, but that's or look directly at them. Okay, and then you talked about the basement and moving everything, the systems and everything out above the basement, which is prone potential for flooding and or moisture, and as we move forward into climate change, maybe more so. Do you use it for anything? I mean, is it?
It's storage.
It's storage.
It's
and
storage.
So storage you can move in the event of a major water event coming your way. Or
and we've never had we've had little puddling at most, but the idea is not to keep anything. If anything, we're going to have things on shelves and nothing right on the floor, and also so
no,
just storage.
no systems down there.
No systems down there. And, you know, we could put a workshop there if we want, and if you want to have equipment on tables and any electrical, we do have electrical outlets, and they're all up high.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. And then Fitwell, the litany of things you went through that sort of qualify for Fitwell at various levels, or, you know, that you noted. Because those seem to be sort of activity type things. How does the restaurant fit into qualifying for Fitwell? I mean, say the tenant moves in, what's their responsibility in terms of?
Oh, I see. Yes.
Meeting those
So
requirements?
as a building, because as a whole building, we qualify for extra points because we created a public use at the first floor, right? So that's just our building certification. And they are, in our discussions with them, they will be providing a couple of things that we would like to add for our Fitwell certification, which are having an accessible water bottle filler, and a defibrillator, and but other than that, just the fact that they are there is points for us, right? If they wanted to get, if they wanted to have a certification as a tenant separately from the building, they could do that as well.
And you have them lined up, the
yes,
oh,
yes,
okay,
yes.
well, that's great. Yeah, and then another question about two other questions about the building and the property. The compact parking, is that part of your lot, your site, or is that an adjacent use that you can take credit for?
Yes, we do have some parking. We have a parking area behind our site that is part of a larger one, but it's an easement for us. But we don't have as many spots as needed by zoning. But we're grandfathered in as far as they're concerned. But that actually gives us points. The fact that we're not using up, let's say we had 14 or 15 employees, we're not using up 14 or 15 parking spots, which is just taking up space. We're actually, we only have 6 of them for our office, and then everyone else is on the street. So first come, first serve, everyone else is on the street.
Gotcha. And but that lot isn't part of your building site. It's a city-owned lot.
Yeah, it belongs to the neighbor River Run, yes, and then we have an easement to use their the first 6 spots.
Okay, and in terms of the external appearance, I think you preserved as much of that as you could, but I think it was the south side that faces the parking. That's where the ERVs are.
Yes,
and that was allowed because that use had been basically taken up by other buildings that attached to it, and it didn't.
Well, that was our argument, that this was not historic fabric. There was not valuable historic fabric that we're taking away from the building, which was of a concern, that we're actually putting holes and changing this historic fabric. But because it already had been changed over time, it was deemed the most appropriate place to put this, to put our louvers.
That's an interesting, I mean, maybe I throw this out to anybody who wants to answer from the group, but that's an interesting potential argument, right? If you're in a historic building that's in a historic district where neighboring buildings have already been torn down, what is the historic fabric of that building if they were touching beforehand? Is it a valid historic argument to be made that you preserve that torn down, or the wall after the building next to it has been torn down, which is sort of what yours did? Anybody in the group have that kind of experience? I mean, maybe that helps make arguments in buildings where you've got at least one wall, but you had 2 freestanding walls that had buildings attached to them, right?
Yeah. But you can see that all 4 sides of our building are visible from the public way, which is why it was difficult to get something approved through a historic district commission, because you have to then make an argument for which is the least important elevation.
Okay. Seema has a question. Go ahead, Seema.
Hi, Karin. This was a fabulous presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, how did you do in terms of costs? Can you speak a little bit
Yeah, that's interesting. You know what? I've been asked that question before, and I have not tallied everything. I would really like to give you a dollar per square foot,
Mhm.
and I'll commit to doing that. Dean, I'll get that through you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and then Patrick had a question also. Patrick McKenna. You'll need to unmute. There you go.
Thanks, Karin, great work on this. Had a privilege to see it myself in person last year, and looks like you've added a lot more. Just in terms of the historics, I'm curious if you investigated historic tax credits at all, and what the conversation was like with them.
Yes, well, that's always an interesting discussion. We decided early on not to get historic tax credits. One reason being that no matter what, we really wanted to have triple pane windows. And we know that at the time, well, certainly 4 years ago, those had not yet been approved easily. And when we looked at historic windows, the cost was crazy. You have to have a 6/6, or in the, behind me, that's 3/6. But also they're just not as efficient if you're creating even simulated divided lights with all those separations. So we decided then just leave those to the exterior, put these new ones in, but then let's not even deal with historic tax credits. So that was our decision, but we decided it was maybe not worth the time and energy for the money that we'd be receiving.
Okay, thanks. Julie Carmelik, you're up.
Hi, I just wanted to respond. I'm the Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit Coordinator for the Connecticut State Historic Preservation Office.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Karin. Great project. I'm
Thank
really,
you.
really excited to see it. And I just wanted to throw out there, everybody who comes into the program is making a decision based on value and impact and all that. And, obviously no hard feelings that you didn't come in for tax credits, but I did just want to let everybody know that we have come a long way in the past 4 or 5 years with regards to energy efficiency upgrades. And we have several projects that have used triple paned windows. We have a passive house rehabilitation, was the first one in the country to receive state and federal historic tax credits. So we are making strides, and certainly I would encourage anybody to at least reach out if they're interested in using tax credits for their historic buildings. So thank you. And thanks, Karin. This is great.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's actually really nice to hear. I'm so happy that you're here today. I know we talked about this ages ago. Yes, and a lot has happened since then. I know that Hotel Marcel has their triple panes, and then there are other examples now since then that have, and hopefully, I think here also just helped us with our local historic district to do this way. And actually it's turned out really well because the interior window lines up with the framing, and that way the exterior windows, which were in good shape, are actually just remaining there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually a very good, clever solution. So I think that's great.
Great. Okay, Patrick, you have a follow-up question?
I do. It's kind of partly for Julie. So Julie, good to hear your voice again. Obviously SHPO does allow interior storms, and I've used them on my own home, and and so I guess you could argue that what Karin installed were interior storm windows, and left the original windows out there. And obviously, everything needs to be reversible. And so I guess as we continue the conversation about, what's maybe there's the expandable theory on what's reversible, in terms of this building, because a lot of the original fabric kind of is remaining, and obviously it would take a lot to reverse a lot of the things that were installed. But as we kind of think more broadly about sustainability, and kind of life safety, and kind of what does life safety mean, and does life safety mean life safety for the planet and reducing carbon footprint, and those conversations. I'm encouraged to hear that SHPO is kind of thinking a little bit more broadly about those. So that's great to hear. So I guess more of a statement than a question.
That's okay. That's what we're here for. All right, thanks, Patrick. Other comments or questions from the field? I'm not seeing anybody now. I had one that occurred to me, Karin.
Yeah.
The Fitwell designation that you've received in the Passive House, in the process of going for those or having now achieved them, do they have any impact on the basically on the, what are the benefits to the project, both afterwards, because there's bragging rights and and we understand what kind of a building that is, but is there anything that, do they assist financing in any way if you're going for a Passive House interior renovation of a historic building? Is that something that has benefit in the marketplace as you build and construct the project? Can you take it to the bank?
Oh, I see. I don't know if my banker quite understands it as yet. If they wanted to look at our just our utility costs, that's certainly a good benefit. I mean, that's the easiest one to show. You show your utility bills, and you also show them the credits you'll be receiving once you have the photovoltaics in place. Certainly well, I also want to specify that the Fitwell, we do not have the certification as yet. We're going through that right now. But in certain markets, Fitwell is very well organized, is very well recognized. It's more of a real estate, it's understood in the real estate world. And I think things like walk score are becoming more common in the residential market as well. So people are starting to hear about it. So I think it's something that's not necessarily well known around here, but I think it's something that is coming. And I think, to have a building that is going to have 3 stars is really helpful to see. And another aspect of Fitwell is that they require that you have signage that shows these certain things. So in the bathrooms, it'll be a little sign that talks about the water use. So those kind of things. So I think it becomes sort of an educational thing as well. And because this is going to be a public building downstairs, as people come in, they'll actually see that there's certain things about this cafe and about this building that is healthy, that encourages health for occupants and healthy health for the building. So I would say it's not necessarily something that is necessarily something that a bank may understand quite yet, but I think it's certainly a good marketing tool and educational piece.
Yeah, I got you. I know Seema has a question. I have a quick follow-on to that, though. Let's say you didn't have a tenant for the restaurant, but you knew that would be a good use for that. Do you think you could use a Fitwell certification for the building, assuming that you get one, as an enticement for, like, that it's the kind of space that a tenant would prefer? Or is it, it's probably location. But if you have a good walk score, that might help in location, right? Yeah, certainly. It helps understand some of these metrics. So when people are looking at, how many people are walking by, the fact that you have a good walk score is just something that you can just show, because it's a third party. It's called walkscore.com. And you can actually see that there are, that it has a good number. It's at 83. So that is a metric that you can show. Yes. Perfect. Okay, Seema, follow-up question?
Dean, this is more follow-up to your question regarding Passive House. In the multifamily affordable housing space, with the passage of Inflation Reduction Act, Passive House or any of these certifications, they give you so much of incentives. There's so many tax credits that are now available, that can be stacked up with the light tax, with the historic tax credits. There's just so many options, so many incentives for energy efficiency and green energy generation. So, I would encourage, I know a lot of us are in the multifamily affordable housing space. So yes, check it out and feel free to reach out. There's just so much happening there that it'll be almost practically, I wouldn't say free, but it will get us very close to
Mhm,
getting these energy efficiency and green generation.
mhm. Yeah, the multifamily is a very, very different world from the commercial, but yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Good
And
advice.
the commercial, I didn't mention, but there are UI or, utility incentives, tax credits there.
For commercial.
Yes,
Did you take advantage of them on this?
yes. So we did ours through UI. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. All right. We're getting near the time bell. Other questions from the audience? About anything? We clearly have an expert on these issues. If people want to ask specific questions. If not, then I think I'll say thank you, Karin. Great
you.
presentation, great project.
Thank you. Thank
And
you
nice
very
that-
much.
Nice that you can live the walk or talk or whatever. You're doing. You can see it behind you. For everybody else's information, we are continuing the P2P network, and we will have a presentation next month in June. I think, Vicki, we're not quite sure of the date yet. We have a couple of different, thanks, Julie. We have a couple of different people potentially lined up, but we'll let all of you know within the next week or so what's coming in June.
Yeah, that's right.
And with that, I think I'd like to thank you all for coming. Go out, go. Once the restaurant opens, go there. I plan to go there next time I'm in New Haven or Fairhaven. And have a good Memorial Day weekend, everybody.